Hi, welcome to part 4 of the Why Ovulation Matters More Than You Think video series. I hope that I'm not the first to say it, but if I am, let me be the first to say that your menstrual cycle does not exist in a vacuum. Because when ovulation is off, that means something else in your body is off. Whether that is your gut health, your thyroid health, your liver health, your heart health, your metabolism, it is all connected. So before we jump in, I just want to ground us in where we've already been throughout this 4-part series. So in part 1, we learned about why ovulation, not your period, but ovulation is the true star of the menstrual cycle. Ovulation is a vital sign because it literally tells you if your endocrine system is working well or not. So, in other words, your menstrual cycle is your monthly health report card. In part 2, we explored the 6 essential signs that your body gives you every month. We call them biomarkers. So we have our monthly menstrual flow quality, the pattern of our post-menstrual dry days, also our cervical mucus patterns, the signs that ovulation has occurred and when in the cycle did it occur, the length of your luteal phase, and then the overall rhythm and length of your cycle. And how charting these 6 essential signs can serve as a daily language of hormonal health. In part 3, we broke down irregular cycles and why they aren't just period problems, but whole body problems. Irregular ovulation is your first red flag that the endocrine system, the thyroid, your gut, your stress load, or your blood sugar are out of balance. And today in part 4, I'm taking it all the way home, okay? Because this is so much bigger than just periods. Most people don't even realize how ovulation is a whole body indicator. Ovulation is not just about fertility, because immediately after ovulation is the only time in a woman's life that she produces the hormone progesterone in those meaningful amounts. And progesterone is one of the most protective hormones in the entire body. Okay, let me just break down why. So, estrogen stimulates cell growth, and this is normal. This is actually healthy. But then progesterone comes in to counterbalance that estrogen that's flowing at peak levels while you're approaching ovulation. Progesterone is going to keep estrogen in check by slowing down excessive cell proliferation. And I love to explore definitions of words just so we can have a clear understanding while we're learning. So the definition of proliferation is the growth or production of cells by the multiplication of its parts. So estrogen is stimulating the growth of normal cells as well as abnormal cells. So when progesterone comes in, it's going to slow that process down. Then progesterone also supports the normal cell maturation. It also regulates healthy cell differentiation. So it's going to differentiate the normal cells from the abnormal cells, and it's going to cause those abnormal cells to die off. That's called apoptosis. Progesterone will also calm tissue inflammation. Plus, it's stabilizing our mood, our sleep, and our metabolism. But here's the key: significant progesterone is only made after ovulation. So, if there is no ovulation throughout the cycle, then there's no to low progesterone, leaving your hormones in a state of unopposed estrogen. Sometimes that's called estrogen dominance. But unopposed estrogen equals continued rapid cell proliferation of the normal and abnormal cells without the apoptosis occurring for the abnormal cells. And this is the hormonal environment that's associated with endometrial hyperplasia, which is a precancerous condition where the uterine lining thickens abnormally, which leads to those heavy irregular bleeding and increasing the risk of endometrial cancer, breast cancer, fibroids, PMS, and PMDD. In fact, progesterone has been found to have a sustained anti-proliferative effect on cancer cells when they are exposed to progesterone for 2 or more days. So ovulation is literally a cancer protective mechanism. So let's talk about the research. So the research on endometrial cancer states that women with long irregular cycles, especially women with PCOS, they're often exposed to months of unopposed estrogen before ovulation ever happens. And this is why women with PCOS have a 3 times higher risk of endometrial cancer. And it's one of the reasons why one of the essential signs to keep track of is when in the cycle did ovulation occur. The studies on breast cancer, including one published in the American Journal of Epidemiology, found that women with irregular cycles, those cycles that are shorter than 24 days or longer than 36 days, they were twice as likely to develop breast cancer in their lifetime. So researchers are suggesting that regular ovulation creates consistent progesterone levels, and that progesterone helps balance estrogen metabolism. This is a balance that is crucial for protecting breast tissue. And then what about ovulation and bone, heart, and metabolic health are connected? How are they connected? Let's start with bone health. So progesterone interacts with the bone building cells that are called osteoblasts. So consequently, regular ovulation is what helps maintain bone density, because when we experience irregular ovulation, that equals that low or chronic low progesterone, which increases the risk for osteoporosis. And that's when you become a grown woman getting sudden fractures from minor bumps, or breaking bones easily if you fall, or having that stooped posture or back pain. No bueno. All right, let's jump to heart and cardiovascular health. So the research suggests that regular ovulation and cyclical progesterone, it helps with regulating our blood pressure, stabilizing arterial walls. It also helps to reduce the risk of atherosclerosis, so that plaque buildup inside of your arteries. And this is exactly why irregular ovulation is linked to higher rates of hypertension, metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, and cardiovascular disease. Let's get into metabolism a little more, and how irregular ovulation is strongly connected to the insulin resistance, the pre-diabetes, the type 2 diabetes, and thyroid disorders, chronic inflammation too, which brings us deeper. It brings us to the deeper interconnections, which is the gut, uterus, vagina axis, the mucous membrane system. One of the most overlooked aspects of reproductive health is that your gut, your uterus, and your vaginal canal, they all share mucosal tissue. So they communicate with each other. They inflame together, they heal together. All mucous membrane tissue in the body is interconnected. And inflammation in one part of the mucosal system affects the others. So here's what that looks like. If your gut is inflamed, then your uterus becomes inflamed. If your uterus inflames, your intestines are going to feel that inflammation too. And a heavy or backed up colon, it physically weighs on the uterus, which causes pain and pressure and cramping, even uterine prolapse. You ever thought about how if you have a yeast infection in your vagina and you start taking probiotics orally, this helps the yeast, like clear up the yeast infection in your vagina, because you're restoring mucosal and microbiome balance in the gut, which leads to treating the vagina and its microbiome. So this is why gut issues often, they show up as painful cramps, gas, bloating, and in the menstrual cycle, irregular bleeding, those severe PMS symptoms, ovulatory disturbances, and chronic infections. The gut is literally the root of it all, and the uterus responds to whatever is happening there. So let's also bring in the thyroid ovulation connection. So the thyroid is the body's metabolic thermostat, and every cell in the reproductive system has thyroid hormone receptors. So thyroid dysfunction will lead to ovulatory dysfunction. When thyroid function is low, the hormone prolactin increases, which shows up as irregular or absent periods, infertility, decreased libido, vaginal dryness, and those headaches. When our thyroid function is low, follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, both of those hormones decrease. And let me just take a moment to help you understand how these two hormones are connected to ovulation. So a follicle is a small cyst-like structure inside of your ovary that contains an immature egg cell. So at the beginning of your cycle, follicle stimulating hormone from the brain stimulates several of these follicles in your ovary to grow and develop. And as the follicles grow and develop, they produce increasing amounts of estrogen, as you approach ovulation. But only one follicle is chosen to reach full maturity, and this is called the dominant follicle. And that follicle will go on to release an egg during ovulation. The increasing amounts of estrogen being produced by the follicles, they continue to peak just before ovulation, which is what causes you to ovulate, because peak estrogen levels trigger your brain to release a surge of luteinizing hormone, which causes the follicle to rupture and release that egg, hence ovulation. But if these two hormones are decreased, then follicle maturation weakens, ovulation is delayed or suppressed entirely, and then progesterone doesn't get produced. And this is why hypothyroidism causes long cycles. Those cycles over 36 days, irregular cycles, anovulatory cycles. So that's a cycle where ovulation didn't occur. The heavy bleeding, the PMS, the infertility, and if a pregnancy is conceived, carried, and delivered, you're more susceptible to those postpartum complications. And then hyperthyroidism brings those very light periods or absent periods or those short cycles that are shorter than 24 days. Again, ovulatory suppression with hyperthyroidism. You can literally see thyroid issues through your cycle length, your mucus pattern, and your basal body temperature chart. Now, basal body temperature is one of the earliest ways to detect thyroid imbalance, even before you go to get blood work from your healthcare providers. And this is why it's so important for you to be observing for those 6 essential signs daily and record them on a menstrual cycle chart. And by collecting this data, this is how you're going to be able to confidently advocate for yourself when it comes to working with your healthcare professionals, as they may blow you off by telling you whatever you're experiencing is normal. But these type of symptoms are not normal. They may be common, but they're not normal. And they also should not be masked and silenced by hormonal birth control. So let's talk about the liver too. The liver hormone connection. Every hormone your body produces passes through the liver to be metabolized. So that means that the liver processes it, sends it to be used, and then it sends the waste of it to be excreted by the body. But if your liver is overburdened by alcohol, those ultra processed foods, environmental toxins, medications, hormonal contraceptives, endocrine disruptors, especially from your household, and beauty and personal care products, then estrogen metabolism becomes impaired, which leads to those elevated estrogen remaining in the body. This is going to worsen your PMS, leading to the painful periods, the clotting, the fibroids, breast tenderness, long cycles, irregular ovulation, and ovarian cysts, which a lot of women experience ovarian cysts. I've heard that so many times. Their doctor told them they have cysts on their ovaries or cervix. The liver is essential for converting estrogen into safe forms and then eliminating the excess. So if your gut microbiome is off, those estrogens will become reabsorbed to stay in the body, worsening that hormonal imbalance, worsening how you feel on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, so I want to bring this home using one of my favorite metaphors from the Fifth Vital Sign book that everybody should read. This is written by Lisa Henderson Jack, who explains that your menstrual cycle is like a smoke detector. For the most part, a smoke detector, it stays silent, right? When everything is fine. But when the house is on fire, that smoke detector is going to communicate by blaring an alarm. And it's going to be more sensitive to smoke than your nose would be. And this kind of alert, more like early warning, is what has saved many lives, right? But in our society, instead of putting out the fire, our healthcare providers like to hand women the headphones to silence the alarm with the hormonal contraceptives. And we just blindly comply. And these hormonal contraceptives, they give us the regular cycles with the predictable withdrawal bleeds, which I must add, it's not ovulation and it's not menstruation that's happening when you're on hormonal contraceptives. So once you have your predictable and stable cycle that's under the influence of the synthetic hormones, you now think that the problem is fixed, while the house is still literally burning down underneath you through the thyroid imbalance, through that liver congestion, the gut dysbiosis, insulin resistance, chronic inflammation, and nutrient deficiencies because we're eating ultra processed food that doesn't have any nutrients. And this is why body literacy is your birthright. I always say that. If you understand your female physiology in a deeper way, you wouldn't fall for the oldest trick in the book. When you don't know what a healthy cycle looks like, you don't know when something is wrong. And since we're talking about the importance of regular ovulation for bone health, thyroid health, heart health, metabolic balance, mood, and cancer protection, I really want to address something major. Like, a lot of women don't understand how hormonal contraceptives stop ovulation. Maybe they do understand how hormonal contraceptives stop ovulation, but a lot of women are not understanding how important ovulation is to our health. But yes, hormonal contraceptives stop ovulation. The combination pills, the patch, the ring, the hormonal IUDs, and the injections, they all work by shutting down the brain to ovary communication loop. So it's suppressing the release of the follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, which is going to prevent the follicle maturation, which is going to block the ovulation. And it also replaces your natural hormones with synthetic hormones. So when ovulation stops, again, you're no longer producing the progesterone. The synthetic progestins from hormonal contraceptives are not the same as your body's own progesterone. Those progestins do not carry the same bone protective, cancer protective, anti-inflammatory, metabolic regulating, nervous system calming effects. Which means that if ovulation protects your overall health and your long-term health, then suppressing ovulation removes that protection, right? And it's why everything I've discussed in this part 4 video, the cancer risk, the bone density, the cardiovascular health, the thyroid function, the gut uterus connection, all apply even more to a woman who is suppressing ovulation through hormonal contraceptives. And I want to be clear, this is not fear mongering. It's just simple physiology. And again, I always say this, you don't have to be a doctor to understand your body, all right? But we deserve informed consent. And the truth is that most women are never told the consequences of suppressing their hormonal cycle with hormonal contraceptives. And I'm going to keep saying this. Body literacy is your birthright. You cannot make informed decisions without real information. And all of this matters, whether you want to have children or not. Your cycle is not just for fertility, but your fertility is a reflection of your overall health. Always remember that regular ovulation supports your brain health, your immune function, your bone strength, your heart health, your metabolism, your sleep, your mood. And even if you never want to have children or don't have any more, ovulation is still one of your body's primary indicators of your well-being. There are women who don't mind that they aren't fertile or they don't get their periods. Let's be clear. There is absolutely no scenario where chronic anovulation is harmless. Cycle irregularities in your bleeding pattern, your cervical mucus patterns, huge cycle length variations, irregular basal body temperatures, shorter than normal luteal phases, and that severe PMS symptoms, they're all early warning signs of deeper dysfunction. Your gut speaks through your cycle. Your thyroid speaks through your cycle. Your liver speaks through your cycle. Your nervous system speaks through your cycle. Your blood sugar speaks through your menstrual cycle. Your menstrual cycle is the one system that mirrors your entire internal environment. And again, it's why body literacy is not optional. Body literacy is a fundamental life skill. So, if something in this video awakened you, if you felt yourself realizing, why didn't anybody teach me this earlier? Because I always thought that too. Then I want to support you in continuing this journey. I encourage you to start with my ebook. It's called Master Your Cyclical Nature. It's a very simple but powerful guide to understanding your monthly patterns and reclaiming your body literacy. And then I want you to join me inside my free masterclass It's also called What They Never Taught You About Your Body. Such an eye-opening class that fills in the knowledge gap that we've all been carrying for far too long. And these two resources are your invitation to reconnect with your body, rewrite your story, and then have the ability to pass along accurate information to the next generation so that we can slow down and end this generational curse of poor reproductive health. All the links are in the description box below. Also, if you want me to break down these interconnections that we discussed today in part 4 of this series, one system at a time, so you can truly understand how your gut, your thyroid, your liver, your blood sugar, your nervous system are all impacting your menstrual cycle and ovulation. If you want that deeper interconnection series, let me know in the comments below so I can create individual videos on each system. Okay? Remember, your body is a messenger. Your menstrual cycle is speaking to you, and you deserve to understand her language. Okay? Peace.